Hello, my name is Becca, and if you don't know me, now you do. I read 14 books in May. I read 14 books in May according to Goodreads. 9 of them are physical copies that I have, 3 of them are novellas, and 2 of them were audiobooks. The first book I read this month was Five Survive by Holly Jackson. I wanted to read this one before I read The Reappearance of Rachel Price, which was my book of the month pick for May. Five Survive is about a college student group that has gotten an RV and they're going down for spring break to the Gulf Coast to meet up with some friends, and they run into some trouble along the way. I feel like a lot of mysteries I can guess or at least have theories, and I feel like with hers I don't guess it as often. This one I don't think I could have guessed because it felt pretty far-fetched by the time we got to it, and I think something that did irk me about it was that a lot of the book is spent as I almost said Pip, which is the character in Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Red. You spend a lot of time with her having the same dialogue over and over and over. And I think I just was like, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. Like, I get your thoughts. Let's, like, move past it a little bit. So I think I got a little impatient there. Overall, I still really liked it. There was a part that when I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's so creepy. It's got goosebumps, and I was like, that would terrify my very soul. So I would say it's definitely worth a read. As with any, mainly any mystery book and definitely any Holly Jackson books, it's a quick read and it's definitely worth it. I think, especially if you're in a reading slump, this is a great one. I really liked it. I did give it 4 stars. I thought it was compelling. I thought it was interesting. There were just a couple of things that I thought in the ending were a little out there, but the setup and how everything gets going, I thought that was done really well. The second book that I read in May ended up becoming one of probably my all-time favorite books, which is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I read Part of Your World first, since this is the second in the 3, and it's not a trilogy because you can read them as standalones, but you really should read them in order. You'll spoil things for yourself about the other books if you haven't read, or at least of Part of Your World, if you haven't read it first. I had a really high bar because I loved Part of Your World so much, and I would say she passed the super high 5-star bar for me. It follows the best friend from Part of Your World, who is also a doctor, and a new doctor comes in, and it's a little bit of an enemies to lovers, a little bit. I feel like it's more one-sided enemies to lovers, but it does start out that way. The reason I love it so much is, as someone who has anxiety, it's the best representation of anxiety I've seen in a character in a novel ever. And so for that reason, it's Abby Jimenez, so it's written beautifully. I love that all of her books are romance books, but there's so much depth to them. It's definitely become like one of my all-time favorite books. It's in the top 10 for sure. How much I've rambled on about this, I'm sure you can guess, and I think I said it in the beginning, I gave it a 5-star because it deserved it. I love this book. The next book that I read in May was The God of Neverland by Gamma Ray Martinez. First of all, this cover is interesting. It's an interesting choice. It looks like the marketing is a little off for what it is. Like, I'm a little like, is this Hook's love story? Who's that man? And after reading the book, I'm only pretty sure who that is. It ends up being that Peter Pan is the god of adventure and wanderlust, I think. Something like that. He's like a god, but he gets kidnapped. And Michael Darling, the youngest of the Darling children, he is a part of this organization of knights that defends the magical realm against, like, the human world, or from the human world, or the human world from the magical creatures. So he has to go and he has to save Peter Pan because he's the one that's familiar with Neverland and all of the knights. It's a really cool premise, and I did enjoy it. I think I ended up rating it a 3. What I really loved about the book was it brought up Tinkerbell and the Lost Boys and Smee and Captain Hook and Tiger Lily and all the things that you know and love from Peter Pan, which I really liked about it because I think so many other Peter Pan retellings, they kind of pick and choose and take from it things that and add things to it that don't entirely make sense. But what's nice about this one is it does bring all the recognizable and things that you love about Peter Pan into the story. So that's really cool. What I don't think I liked about it was that it didn't really feel like high stakes for the characters ever. And it just, you followed them from one thing to the next. Like, you would just be walking along, and then, oh, they've come across Tiger Lily and the tribe, and they're hanging out and talking to them and figuring out how to move forward with them in a peaceful way. And then, okay, and they got through that. And then they're walking, and then they get into another pickle, and they get through that, and you know that they're going to. And so they're just like, oh, and then they get through another pickle. Like, it's traversing, and it's in a pickle. Like, walk and pickle. And it doesn't feel like ever like, oh boy, like, this pickle's a big one because, you know, this could happen or this could happen. It's more just like, okay, this could happen, but we all know it's gonna be fine. Like, I just was like, all right, and we'll get through this pickle. Just put that back in the jar. The next book that I read is one of my favorite thriller mystery authors, which is Frida McFadden, which I know is some people's queen and some people's worst enemy. I really like her so far. I mean, I just don't have anything against her. I loved The Housemaid and I liked The Housemaid's Secret. So what are you gonna do? I thought it was a really good second book to the first one, and I definitely didn't see it coming. I feel like her books read so fast, and there's always a twist in them that I'm like, whoa, Nelly, didn't see that coming. I say always, but I think this is only the second Freedom McFadden book. So always is in, it's 100% rates too. So there's that. But I thought it was a good follow up to The Housemaid, and because The Housemaid was absolutely insanity, and it was so good, and I loved it. And this one, I just felt like it was a really good continuation. I think it felt like, okay, that could happen. I bought it, but it still was insane. I think she's brilliant. I love her. This is a 5-star read for me. I'm not too picky with 5 stars. I think if I really liked it and really enjoyed my time and was like, wow, that was really good, it's a 5-star read for me. Like, if I'm like, no notes, 5 stars. Because come on. So really good follow up to The Housemaid, and definitely recommend picking this one up. I think there's another one coming out, so can't wait for that. Next thing that I read, a novella, part of the Improbable Meet Cute series that Amazon got a few romance authors together to write novellas for, and I'm an Amazon Prime member, so I was able to I don't have a Kindle, and so I was able to just get the Kindle app on my phone, and I just read them on the phone. I actually read 3 of them. All the novellas I read this month were all from the Improbable Meet Cute series. I read the one by Christina Lauren, Ashley Wilson, and Addie Jimenez, because those are the authors that I already love. I will say that all 3 of the ones I've read so far, I think there's 5 or 6 of them, but the 3 that I've read so far, they're so simple. It's just how people meet, and I think that's so cute because I love hearing about how people meet their significant others. Like, when I first meet people and they're dating, I'm like, oh my god, like, how did you guys meet? Like, I just love hearing that. So I think that it's really fun, really good, like, cleanser in between after Housemaid Secret. And it was just really cute. So it does come with Amazon Prime, and I think Kindle Unlimited. And to be honest, I don't have a Kindle, so I don't really know how all of that works, but it is included with Prime, and I have the other ones to read still, but they're cute so far. The next book is an audiobook that I listened to. I rented it off of Libby, which if you don't use, you should, or Spotify has started including books in their premium subscription, and I've been listening to a ton of books that way, so that's been really awesome. But I listened to it's Next Level Basic, the definitive hand guide for the basic bitch, I think is what it's called, by Stassi Schroeder. So one of my toxic traits is that I love Bravo, and that includes Vanderpump Rules. Stassi Schroeder is from Vanderpump Rules, and it's read by her. I rated it 3 stars, but it is what I expected it to be. I'm reading Vanderpump Rules to, like, kind of when she ended, which is unfortunate, but like, she had the biggest growth, I think, and then I think after she was fired on the show, she did take steps in order to educate herself and be able to grow from her experience. And so I listened to both of them this month. She talks a lot about, her fashion and getting into Vanderpump Rules and her life before that and what kind of filming in the beginning was like. And I thought that was really interesting to listen to, was just all the behind the scene crap that went on. I think also something I appreciated from it is I feel like she used her platform knowing that she could be influencing young girls and her being like, you know what, I don't like this, but if you do, that's great. Like a basic bitch does what she wants because she wants to. Her other book is called Off With My Head, and that she came out with after being canceled. And it was really interesting to hear more about what happened with that situation and then what steps she took. I kind of went into both of these books knowing that she had messed up and then wanting to kind of hear how she's grown from that as a person. And so I thought it was important to me as someone who liked her and liked the show to see how she grew from that, and she addresses that in Off With My Head. I gave both books 3 stars. Would I recommend them? No. I think if you like Vanderpump Rules, sure. I'd be like, yeah, like go ahead and listen to it. She reads both of them. So I think that, if you like, it's just all based on what you like. But if you don't, if you're not like a Vanderpump Rules fan, I would not be like, what you should read is this book. So those are the 2 books that I listened to this month. Next book that I read was Wonder by R.J. Palacio. I've owned this for probably 10 years. I'm really trying to read more of the books that have just been sitting there forever that I've just gotten used to their existence in my life, but I haven't actually read them. And I really loved it. So if you haven't seen the movie, haven't read the book, Wonder is a beautiful book that is written about a young boy who has facial deformity. There are a few medical ailments that he has, that he was born with. It's basically about him going into middle school. He's been homeschooled by his mom his whole life, and now he's going into the world of middle school. And it's about this young boy and how he conquers middle school, which sucks for most of us anyway, and how he goes through it and shines regardless of any adversity that he's having to overcome. The book is written only from the kid's point of view. There's no parent's point of view in this because it wanted to feel like it was just a story that lived with the kids. And it's just a beautiful thing to see how if someone who society would deem that they would have a lot of struggles can take what other people view as struggles and turn them into a beautiful part of themselves. And then you just see it all through like the POV of him. It's multiple viewpoints. So there's the main character, Avi. It also goes through his sister and his friend and his sister's boyfriend. It goes through all of their point of views. And then in the sister's boyfriend's POV, the text is all written differently. Like there's not like capital letters and punctuation, and it's really interesting. And she said that it's because the character was a musician, so she wanted his chapter to seem like his thoughts were like musical notes. It's just very thoughtfully written. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it's actually probably not the book's fault and more the fact that I saw the movies first. The movie, if you haven't seen it, is different in the way that you do see more of the parents' point of view, and I think something that the movie gives you that the book doesn't is you see visually the impact, both that like he's having on people. You can see the hurt that they're going through. Like there's just a lot more subtleties that you can see watching people rather than reading about it and trying to guess from the writing, like, okay, that's probably what they look like their expression. But seeing it is just, and like having the music, like it's just a little bit different. The book is still really good. It just was plus in the movie form, which is really crazy because I usually tend to think that the movie isn't as good as the book, but in this case, I think the movie was a little bit better because I also enjoyed in the movie they give the mom a little bit more depth and a little bit more backstory. I understand her choice to have it only be from the kid's perspective, and I think it was a great choice for the book. And I think for the movie, it was a great choice to add some more depth to the mom. Like, it makes sense. I really enjoyed it. It was a really heartwarming story, and I feel like, reading about adversity and the impact that people can have turning something that people use a negative into a superpower is always a powerful story to read, but then when it's also with a kid, it's good for the heart, it's good for the soul. So 4 stars for Wonder. So I read my first Karen Slaughter book, and it was Pieces of Her. I know that Karen Slaughter is very popular. I know she's very popular. And I feel like I'm always out here with the hot takes. I did not enjoy this book very much. It was okay. I think I ended up rating it 3 stars. I think it's probably a 2.5. It was okay, but I wouldn't recommend it. So I actually think I put it as a 3, but I think it's more 2.5 or a 2, which I'm scared to say because I know that people love Karen Slaughter. It's so long, guys. For a mystery, the text is pretty small for a mystery, and also it's almost 500 pages. It's 468 pages long with small text and long chapters. Why? I either need shorter books or shorter chapters, bigger print, but to have none of them makes it hard to read. The amount of plot holes was a lot. It's so long, and there's choices made that are so confusing. And for instance, with Holly Jackson, this is also a book I read in May, so I will go over this one as well. But little things would happen, but she always explains them. Even if they're a misdirect, they do get explained, which I need because my brain is too much of like, yeah, but what about this? It's not a spoiler, but the mom makes a big deal in the beginning about how her middle name is Eloise on her birth certificate, but she wanted it to be Heloise, but the nurse misspelled it and she didn't ask her to change it. And it's like this thing, and it's very much written like a misdirect. And you're just like, you're taken to a dead end that never gets explained. And you're like, but why did that happen? And I think that happened throughout the book. This was like trying to be like, I'm not far-fetched, but here's a bunch of shit that doesn't make sense. But you just believe it and then be stunned. And I'm like, okay. But I really want to know what people thought if they read it. There was just too many loose ends, too much shit that didn't make sense, too many times where I was like, the main character gives no shits about her safety. So funny because, like I said, mysteries are my palate cleansers. And so when I read them, I'm pretty much expecting to be like blasting through them. But this one, I was like, this almost put me in a reading slump. I was like, this is almost a 500-page mystery with plot holes where I don't understand what the fuck is going on. And it doesn't make sense. Somebody please tell me. Because what the fuck? Something to note with Pieces of Her is it has almost every trigger warning out there. So please look it up before reading it. There's a lot. I don't want to say what they are because that is kind of spoilers, but I would look them up before reading this. Then I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one is basically about a girl who, it's right on the back, so I'm not spoiling anything, but her father dies, so she has to go back to her hometown, and she's able to see ghosts. She's a ghostwriter for an author, and that's kind of what I knew going in. I really liked it. I feel like there's mixed reviews on this one, and this was my first Ashley Poston, so I wasn't sure what I would end up thinking, but I really enjoyed it. It's a little bit more of a slow burn, but I really like that. The reason that I ended up giving this one 4 stars is not the book. It's all me. But that's why it's my rating. What I didn't realize is that a very large portion of the book is about her grieving and dealing with the aftermath of her dad dying, and it's very much about grief. And while I think that's fine, I would say it's a trigger warning if you are dealing with that right now. I don't know that this is the best book if you're going to be triggered by something like that. It's maybe not the best read. I'm just not really in a space where I don't think I like reading about mortality. So I think the reason that this didn't end up being a 5-star read for me was it was a little bit hard for me to get through, and it made me not want to pick it up as much. So it wasn't the book's fault; it was my fault or my preference. Um, and this is dead romantic, so what was I expecting? I guess, but I think I just thought it would be heavier on like the ghost aspect and not as heavy on the grief aspect, and it ended up being so. So that's why it went down for me. But if that is not something that bothers you, that's something you're able to, have emotional maturity about and separate yourself from in a healthy boundary kind of way, go for it. I'm just not there. The last two that I'll talk about are very different from the Dead Romantics and from each other. The first one I brought up a couple of times, which is the reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson, her newest release, the book of the month. I gave it 4 stars. I loved the whole thing until the ending. I thought the ending was really rushed. It was tied up way too neatly, and I just didn't buy the relationships that develop at the very end. And that's kind of it. Otherwise, it was really good. I liked the way that it was put together. I liked the misdirects. I like with Holly Jackson, if she brings something up, it gets explained somehow later. So I really did enjoy it. Would definitely recommend it. I thought that it was a really unique idea that I haven't seen before. It reminded me a little bit of None of This Is True, just in the way that like media is happening around the story. The main character was a little, I didn't understand why she was acting like an 85-year-old man saying get off my lawn. But I still bought into it, hook, line, and sinker, because Holly Jackson's great. But yeah, the ending, too neat of a bow, I think, and it was a little like, I don't fully buy the relationships. I don't think they had enough time to develop. So that's this one. But still really glad I ended it. And I thought that I was going to end the month. I thought I was going to start it and end it. Start with 5 Survive, end it with the reappearance of Rachel Price. So start and end with Holly Jackson. But then I had time, so I fit in one more, which is the first in the Dark Tower series. This one's called Gunslinger. It's by Stephen King. This is the first Stephen King that I read. I don't read a lot of thrillers because, again, anxiety. So I don't read a lot of them, but this book, for 2 reasons I read it. One is it's more fantasy than it is thriller, or how I was told it was. And then my older brother loves the series. And this last Christmas, he asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I was like, give me one of your favorite books. And he did, so he gave me Gunslinger. It's not long, it's under 300 pages. It's kind of like a Western meets fantasy. It's a little Westworld without the robots. Not having read anything by Stephen King, because I'm a chicken. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's probably 2.5. Maybe 3. It's so hard. I feel like I sometimes just feel mean. But basically, it's about this guy who is on a quest to find this man called the Man in Black. And this first book is about this first part of his odyssey in finding them. The very beginning of the book, Stephen King has like a foreword to it. And this is, I guess, a newly edited version from him, where he went back through and took out parts or rewrote parts that he wanted to. He said that he started writing the series in 1970 and ended, I think, in 2002 or 2003. So it spans many decades of his writing. And he was talking about how this first book is really indicative of where he was at. He was like, it's very clearly written by a young man who had attended too many writing seminars. And so that gave me kind of a cushion going into it of being like, okay, so like this isn't fully representative of where his writing is now, of like things he writes now. And the series spans so long that I would be interested to see like how it progresses. I read 90% of this and then listened to the last 10%. And it was a lot easier and a lot better listening to it. And this is why. The book makes me feel a little bit stupid. It reminds me of a classic in that it's written in English that we don't use commonly in modern times. And so I'm stumbling over words trying to be like, okay, but like, what does that mean? What does that mean? It's really hard to visualize because of the way it's written. He'll say things where you're like, okay, I'm following, I can picture it. And then there's like a sentence where it's like, and the sky hung down and I was vertical to it. And you're like, the sky hung down, you were vertical. And I'm like, what is, and then like he says words like heretofore. what in the tarnation is this cowboy saying to me? So I think listening to it, I didn't stumble as much over words I didn't know. Like listening to it, I can get the gist, and I'm like, ah, that's what he's saying, and I can move through it a little bit easier. I have heard people say that who have read it that the second book is an easier read than this one. I think just because my brother loves this series so much, I'll continue reading it, listening to it probably, just because I just get too caught up in the language, to be honest. There are indications throughout that not everything is as it seems for our characters. And I found that really interesting. And also, our main character, Roland, does kind of pair up with this little boy on the way. And I really liked their relationship. I thought that was written really well, and I really enjoyed that. But most of it, I was like, what does that say? What does that mean? Why? Clearly, my brain is broken. So that is it. That is everything I read in May. It was kind of all over the board. There was like some literary fiction, there was some fantasy, there was folklore, there was romance, there were scary things, there were mystery. I mean, we're all over the place. And then I had all of my like little novellas, and I want to finish that collection. That's it. That's everything I read, and I hope you had a good month, and I hope that where you are, it's not too hot yet. I'm in Los Angeles, and it's already getting warm, and I'm already sick about it because that's who I am. But I hope you are having a great day. Thanks for watching this video, and let me know if you've read any of these books. I feel like a lot of them, like few of them are popular, but most of them are books that I don't see people talking about these days. So if you've read any of them, let me know. And otherwise, I will see you on other parts of the internet. Bye!